4. I'm Susan Cox, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. Let's start with roll call. Gino?
I'm here.
Pete Knox? Here. Kelly Sutherland? Is not here tonight. Lawrence Green?
Here.
Michelle Weber? Missing. And Heather Murphy. Thank you. Okay, we do have a quorum. So are there any adjustments to the agenda this evening? We have a pretty full agenda, but we will get through it as quickly as we can. Jameson is joining us from the road in Washington. Do you have any comments this evening, Jameson?
Just thank you, Chair. Just briefly, last night we had our inaugural State of the District event. And I want to thank it was successful. I'm hearing quite a bit of feedback around the community, and I want to thank the board for being there. I want to thank Gino for his part there as well. And a lot of folks in the community showed up for that event to talk about mobility and how it connects to the work that they're doing. But I also wanted to thank internal staff. There was a team that put this together, and they gelled really quickly to pull that off. I think Eric's been with us for 2 months. And that event rested at his feet along with his team. And as they were getting to know each other, they're working on this event. So I want to thank that group, our marketing group. I want to thank my assistant, Brianna, our planning team, and all that had a big role in getting that plan. Terrell Group, making sure that looked good as well. But there's some other things that are happening around the district that are just as big, that are requiring multi area teams to make things happen. We're going to hit our recruitment target here at the graduation of our next class, and that was HR and training and operations, having to modify some things. And then also we have a CAD AVL project, which is that goes on. They go on our vehicles, so we know where our vehicles are, and that was a big lift as well. So a lot of cross-functional work happening around the organization. I wanted to acknowledge that. And then finally, we had our town halls last week, our town hall meetings last week. And again, we heard a lot from our employees, our frontline employees, on things they need and things that are going well and things that we need to pay closer attention to, and got a lot of really good feedback to move the district forward. So I just wanted to acknowledge that energy that's happening within the district as well, and is being reflected on some of our outside events. And I think last night's event was the first of many, and I was so proud of the work that was done there and the response of the community to engage with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Jameson. I would like to add congratulations to you and your team. It was an amazing event, I think, from being able to be there as a board member and see the community and how energetic and how enthusiastic they were, and what's managed. And everyone was still smiling, all of you who were cleaning up. I got a picture of them cleaning up at the end. They were still smiling, but it was really, really a truly great event. And it's, I heard a lot of comments from people in the community about, wow, this was great. And how can we do this in our organization? But we'll remind them that we did it first, right? So anyway, congratulations again. It was a lot of hard work, but we're looking forward to this as an annual, I think, right? Eric, okay. Okay, here we go. So we have public comment tonight, and I do think that we have some people who have signed up. And I also want to note that we have received one public comment from Alex Doe on Tuesday, October 15th, and it was distributed to all board members for review. And so we want to note that that has been received. Thank you for that. So is there anyone that's has signed up for public comment? Welcome, Tiffany. This is a familiar face.
To turn this on. Here we go. All right, I'm going to read, so I apologize, but good evening, directors. My name is Tiffany Edwards. I'm the Vice President of Policy and Community Development for the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here to express strong support of the proposed recommendations in LTD's System Review Plan. The Eugene Chamber has over 1,300 members in the region and within the service area of LTD. Many of our businesses, employees, and their families depend on the service services provided by LTD to access jobs, school, and other essential services. The business community also recognizes the service of LTD as a valuable amenity for our community, a resource that supports the mission of our organization to ensure that our community can thrive. As such, the business community makes significant investments in LTD's service through the local and statewide payroll taxes, and we appreciate the inclusion of business voices at the table when these important and impactful decisions are under consideration. The system review process that led us to the proposed service recommendations in the final report that you'll be considering tonight reflects a thoughtful, inclusive, and data-driven approach. It's clear through the survey efforts that our community is asking for more frequent and more reliable service, which is consistent with what we hear from the business community. We also recognize the award-winning work that went into the recruitment of operators, enabling LTD to make these service improvements, and the fiscal discipline to put finite resources into serving the community's needs most effectively and efficiently. We applaud this great work, LTD's strong leadership, and the ongoing efforts to proactively engage the community in the decision-making process. We urge your approval of the proposed 2024 system review plan. And in the spirit of last night's fantastic event, I agree with you, Susan, where we saw an impressive showing of our community's business leaders in taking the LTD pledge, we'll see you on the bus. Thank you.
Thanks, Tiffany. Are there any other people who wanted to testify today? Okay.
Nobody online.
No one online. Okay, great. Thank you. At this point, I would like to recognize the Employee of the Month, and I think we have 2 Employees of the Month. And that's great. I want to make sure we get pictures.
I'm going to stand. Hopefully I project enough and you can hear me.
Mm-hmm.
All right, great. So my name is Jake McCallum. I'm Director of Operations and Public Safety here at Lane Transit District. And we're going to do 2 Employee of the Months because we didn't do September. So we're going to do September 1st. Unfortunately, I don't see this person in the audience. So, but I'm still going to read what Becky McDermott was recognized. So Becky McDermott has been an employee here at the district since December 2015, 8 years of safe driving. Becky's commitment to exceptional service was exemplified recently when she went out of her way to assist a young passenger. After providing him with directions to Goshen on a previous route, Becky took it upon herself to ensure he had boarded the correct bus. Upon returning to the station, she used her break time to cross the station and check on him personally. This act of dedication highlights her care for customers and passengers alike. Her supervisor, Jeff Haddon, commented on Becky's recognition, stating, "It's a genuine pleasure to serve as Becky's supervisor. She is dependable, trustworthy individual who deeply cares about our customers. Becky consistently performs at her best for LTD every day. I'm thrilled that she has been honored as Employee of the Month, an award she truly deserves." And she does. Becky is an excellent employee that truly cares about the people that she serves day in and day out. So that, I think we need to do it. And then this gentleman next to me, Steve Hickson. So Steve Hickson has been selected to receive the October Employee of the Month. Steve was hired as a bus operator in April of 2017. The compliments, so Steve got 2 submittals for the October Employee of the Month. This driver was exceptional, going way beyond the call of duty to ensure that passengers with walkers and wheelchairs had a place on the bus while being polite, patient, and considerate to all passengers. Steve called into operations to go around the block. This is the second one. Steve called into operations to go around the block so he could pick up an ADA customers who needed his bus. His ADA bus bays on the bus were full, And when 2 ADA customers left, he was able to assist the other ADA customers into the appropriate location of the bus and get them to where they needed to go. When asked to comment about Steve's selection, the supervisor said, "I appreciate his positive nature and willingness to go the extra mile to help his passengers and coworkers." And my comment that's not on here is Steve's a great guy. Steve's an active member of the union. And so sometimes we might butt heads a little bit, but at the end of the day, we shake hands and we get business done, which is important. So Steve, thank you for your service. I appreciate everything you do out there. Steve is a great person.
Steve, congratulations. And on behalf of all of us, here is a letter of recognition. All right. Here is a certificate of appreciation. Here's a pen. Okay. Here's a check.
Thank you.
And this is my favorite part. Here you go. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And do you have would you like to come up and congratulate? It'd be
She's a
great to
little
have
shy.
your picture. Okay, sorry. Thank you.
Thank
Do you
you.
have anything you'd like to say?
Well, since starting here, I've had mostly positive experience. I love the community. And I love the people I work with. And I hope to continue providing the service that our community deserves in the future.
Thank you. It's always so fun to see the Employee of the Month and really get a sense for what great staff we have. Okay, thank you. At this point, we need to pass a consent agenda. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
And is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded, so the consent agenda is passed, and do we need to vote individually? Okay. See, I'm just subbing for Gina. Okay. So Pete, let's start with you. Pete?
Aye.
Heather?
Aye.
Lawrence?
Yes.
Susan? Aye, so it's unanimous. Thank
Gino.
you. Oh, Gino,
I vote yes also.
thank you. Okay, so moving on to the business information, we've got a number of proposals tonight, and we're going to start with Dave Roth, right? On the COA LTD system. Did I miss it?
Stiff formula plan update.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, same. Stiff formula plan update. Thank you, Dave.
Good evening, board. I am Dave Roth, Director of Mobility Planning and Policy, and
And I'm Cosette Reese, Director of Mobility Services.
so we'll be co-presenting on this item. All right. So tonight, LTD staff are seeking discussion and feedback from the board on the addition of 4 new project concepts for the FY 26-27 STIF formula plan. STIF, by the way, is Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund program for the benefit of our viewers. So I think you're all familiar with the background on the STIF program, but again, for the benefit of our viewers and the public, I'll go through just a little summary here. So the SIF program was introduced as part of HB 2017, which was the last big transportation package at the state level. The purpose of the program is to provide a dedicated funding source for improving, maintaining, and expanding public transportation for all users. STIF funding should support access to jobs, improve mobility, relieve congestion, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions within the state of Oregon. It's funded by a statewide payroll tax along with non-highway gas tax, ID card fees, and cigarette taxes. And broadly speaking, the funding falls into two categories: STIF discretionary funds, which are the competitive funds allocated statewide, and then STIF formula funds, which go towards qualified entities who develop the formula plans. LTD as a qualified entity. LTD technically has two roles. The qualified entity, which is responsible for programming the STIF formula dollars that are allocated to Lane County, and we accept applications for other public transportation service providers within Lane County. Technically, the board is actually the qualified entity for the purposes of the STIF program. And we also serve as a public transportation service provider. So we program funds as a provider of mobility services, and that's part of our STIF formula plan as well. And as a public transportation service provider, we're currently developing our STIF formula plan for the FY 26-27 biennium. In terms of developing and improving the plan, the plan will be reviewed by the STIF Advisory Committee, as well as the LTD board, and we have meetings scheduled over the coming months. Ultimately, the STIF formula plan needs to be submitted to ODOT no later than January 16th of 25. So you'll be hearing a lot more about the STIF formula plan, and this is worth mentioning and noting here that for the purposes of the item tonight, we're just having a discussion. There's no approval needed or anything like that. We're just discussing some new concepts for the formula plan, but you will be reviewing the detailed plan at your next board meeting and then ultimately approving the plan before it goes to ODOT in January. So by and large, our proposed STIF formula plan for this round continues the same good work that we've done in our previous round of funding. And so that includes things like funding our specialized and accessible services, providing service increases for our fixed route system, purchasing vehicles, both buses and specialized cutaway vehicles, supporting our passenger fare programs, for example, our student pass program, and supporting project administration and project contingencies. So we make sure we're including or planning for sufficient funds if there's cost increases for our programs and projects. As well as our own public transportation service provider projects, we also incorporate other public transportation service provider funding within Lane County. So we can anticipate some requests coming from LCOG, for example, to be included in our formula plan. So before moving into the new proposals, I'll just mention that we did bring this to the Strategic Planning Committee on October 1st. So the same item, same information for discussion and questions with the Strategic Planning Committee. And I should mention that the SPC members who commented provided general support for these new additions, as well as feedback that in planning for the upcoming biennium formula plan that LTD should ensure that core services are adequately funded prior to adding new programs and services. So that's the feedback we received from SPC. So tonight we're discussing the addition of 4 new project concepts. And again, we're seeking your feedback and discussion at this point. You will have opportunities to officially review the detailed plan at your next meeting. And then again, before the plan is approved prior to submittal to ODOT. So I'm going to talk about the first concept, and then I'll hand it off to Cassette, and we'll just kind of go back and forth here. So the first concept is what we're calling our transit and shared mobility system integration and modernization. So this project, which is consistent with our strategy around mobility management and thinking about ourselves as a mobility manager for Lane County, would fund the modernization and integration of the Eugene Springfield bike share system into LTD's portfolio of mobility services. So a modernized and transit integrated shared micromobility system will provide the community with a new and more accessible mobility options and extend the reach of LTD's fixed route bus network. This program would be funded, it would be a capital investment, not operations focused, and it would utilize rollover funds from our previous biennia. So we do have some rollover dollars that we are planning on expending this round. So not new dollars for the biennium. And the funding would be directed toward the purchase and launch of a replacement fleet of pedal assist and normal pedal bicycles and docking stations distributed through Eugene Springfield. We plan to utilize established agency and stakeholder partnerships through the Shared Mobility Work Group to design and operationalize the integrated system. And when I say integrations, that's going to be at different levels and it would be a phased approach. So early integrations could look like LTD branded shared bicycles. In the future, we'd be talking about trip planning and technology and potential fare integrations down the road. With that, I'll hand it off to Cassette.
Great. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
So the second project that we're going to talk about is an on-demand service pilot in the rural area. And this would be the match for what we've already applied for discretionary STIF funds for. So this service is currently operating as a pilot. It's being operated by LCOG and is providing on-demand service from residents in South Lane County who otherwise don't have public transportation services, and providing connections up into the metro area so that they have opportunities to do grocery shopping, go to the pharmacy, go to the doctor, do a lot of things. It's operating Monday through Friday currently, and again, it's strictly serving the South Lane County area. As a concept, it's proven itself. So it's very valuable. The folks who are using it find it to be critical in providing connections to the metro area for those services and to purchase goods and services. And what we also know is that there's other parts of our rural Lane County that have no service. So what we'd like to do is to expand on the service that we're currently providing in South Lane County and look to provide a similar service to other parts of the rural Lane County. So what we're suggesting, what we're recommending and applying for is to continue the 5-day-a-week service and potentially add three other areas, rural areas, into the area that we serve. So we would be essentially cutting back some of the days for South Lane County, and we would be redeploying those resources into other parts of rural Lane County. Again, just providing access to those folks. So, and again, that would just be match, as we've already applied for a discretionary application.
All right, so the third concept here is what we're calling the Transit Access and Safety Improvements Opportunity Fund. So this project would establish a new program administered by LTD to fund transit access and safety improvements for city-owned rights-of-way within LTD's district boundary. The purpose of the program is to improve safety conditions for transit users who are walking, bicycling, or using a mobility device to access our fixed route transit network and stops. Typical projects funded would include pedestrian crossing safety improvements, sidewalk infill if there's gaps leading up to a stop or station, transit stop improvements themselves, lighting improvements where there's not enough lighting, and other enhancements that are tied to transit access. So this funding would be available through an application process to roadway jurisdictional owners, so typically cities, and they would typically leverage these dollars to add to existing planned or program projects. So basically, if they're short some money to improve some safety needs, they could tap into this fund to do those needs and be more efficient with their project and construction mobilization and that sort of thing.
Good. And so the fourth project that we're talking about tonight is a Community Outcomes Opportunity Fund. So this is a project that would establish a new program, and we've been having ongoing conversations with community members about what's important to our community in terms of transportation. And we've identified 4 initiatives, 4 areas, including housing, public education, public health, and workforce development. So this would create an opportunity fund that we could continue to have those conversations with the community and identify opportunities to potentially pilot projects and programs. And some examples of what those programs could look like is there's an Instacart program that TriMet implemented, and they've had great success. So what we know is that there's people who are currently using our system, especially our ADA paratransit system, that some days they're just not able to actually access and use the system. So rather than providing them a trip on our ADA paratransit system or another system, potentially we could provide them a membership to Instacart, which allows them to, at their own convenience, purchase goods and services, purchase pharmacy, and without limit. So they don't have to make multiple trips. They're able to have that served through the Instacart. Another idea, another potential pilot would be partnering with a low-income housing facility and providing either reduced or free fares for the folks who are living in that, all the family members and folks who are living in those. So those are just some examples of some pilot programs. And as we know, we're continuing to have conversations, and I think that there's going to be more ideas that we could explore and potentially fund. This is for 2 years out. So this gives us an opportunity to have those conversations and make sure that we're using these funds in the best way possible for these initiatives.
Okay, and that concludes our presentation. So happy to take any questions or feedback from you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Are there?
In regard to the LCOG program in South Lane County, it's interesting because in my office, we have families using the various forms of transportation every day, especially Spanish and Mayan speaking families. So what I'm curious about is there a fee for that particular? Is that one of the fee? I'm getting a little confused between our route around town and
That's a great
Ride
question.
Source, and
Yes, there is a fee.
there's a fee, a nominal fee.
It's very
small fee?
nominal. I think it's like very nominal.
Okay. And does that particular program go to the very rural areas in South Lane, including Dorena, London,
It does.
Diston?
It does.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. And are there any bilingual drivers in that, just curiously, because we promote the programs in our department.
I appreciate that. To my knowledge, we don't have bilingual. That's not a prerequisite, but we do have services available that can assist us in the moment to provide
Fantastic.
translation services.
Our navigators help the families learn how to navigate accessing the transportation on their own. So it's
Appreciate
good for us to know. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'm impressed with these things coming down the pipeline.
Thank you.
Other questions? Comments? Pete?
I just wanted to add, Dave already kind of explained this, but I'm one of the board members assigned to the committee, and they voted to pass this to the board unanimously, and there was generally a good support for all of the things. I know that I don't think we're voting on it tonight, but because we got more stuff coming, but there was really good support.
That was very informative, and it is exciting to see what's coming and hear what's already happening. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And then I think, Dave, you are staying up there, right? Okay. So now Dave is going to present about the LTD system review, the COA.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Actually, Jeremy Carr will be presenting.
Okay.
I'm a BI analyst with Lane Transit District. I'm the project manager on the COA. In the agenda, it does say Dave.
Okay.
There's not 3 seats up here, though. So again, thank you for having us. I do want to mention before we get started that in addition to the Jane Chamber, we had letters of support from the Springfield Chamber, Willamette Lane Parks and Recreation, Springfield School Districts, and the Lane Youth Transportation Advisory Council.
Right. We have
LITAC,
thank you.
the mouthful. Today, we're going to be presenting the results of the COA, the Comprehensive Operations Analysis, which we dubbed the LTD System Review. We've done a lot of work. We're going to be presenting on that and asking for approval of the final plan this evening. Over the past year, consultant, and I should apologize. Joining me tonight is Thomas Whitman, the project manager with Nelson Nygaard. Over the last year, Nelson Nygaard and LTD staff have done a lot of work, doing a lot of analysis on our system and doing a really impressive outreach and engagement process. We had 3 different phases of outreach, which Thomas will go over. The majority of requests were for more frequent service, and I do want to add that over 80% of the people surveyed said that they thought that these recommendations were good. In addition to the final plan, the consultants and staff worked on several other projects which will be implemented later on with the long-range mobility plan and with other future planning projects. That was a stop balancing methodology to adjust stops for efficiency. Phase 1 of the downtown circulation study of the city of Eugene, a vehicle mix analysis, and a station usage analysis. There's nothing in the project pertaining to these tonight, but those will be used in later planning processes. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Thomas, and he's going to lead us through the presentation.
Great, thank you. I want to start off by, just introducing what is the system review. The technical terms, comprehensive operational analysis, but in essence, it's really a roadmap for how do we build back a system, after 2020 and the impacts that COVID had and the changed travel patterns that are within the community. Does LTD service go to where people want to go today? And, we took a real in-depth look in terms of, does the service match today's travel levels? And, within the resources that we had available, specifically the operators and maintenance staff, what is the level of service that we could operate today as well as in the future? As Jeremy mentioned, this is a long, it's been a year-long process, where we looked at it, understanding the system, engaging the public with 3 different phases of outreach. And I'll give a little bit more description of that a little bit later as well. Ultimately leading to a series of recommendations that we're here to present to you tonight for approval. So what are those recommendations and how did we get there? So I want to start off by saying just what are some of the things that we based our recommendations off of? And, we didn't just say, hey, let's draw some things up here, but instead said we looked at what is the ridership for every route, every trip, by time of day, what are the connections, where are the strengths and weaknesses of every existing route? We also looked at regional travel demand using cell phone data that shows us where people are going to and from, not just those riding LTD buses, but overall, so we could see what are the biggest travel patterns? How have they changed, from the pandemic? And how does LTD service match with those travel patterns right now? We looked at where, the concentration of the population and employment were, where some of the higher need, and higher need populations, live. We looked at where some of the growth is, even in the past 5 years, there's a series of higher density housing that has come online, and there's more planned. How do we account for that today as well as in the future? And then we had a series, 3 different rounds of public outreach, and I want to describe those before I want to go into the specific recommendations. The first phase of outreach focused on surveys of the community as well as the riders, so that we could understand the needs of what will cause existing riders to ride more often, or what are their specific requests for improvements from a service perspective? And from a general community perspective, what are some of the elements that might get you using LTD services? We followed this up by reaching out to the community and holding neighborhood meetings, focus groups, going and talking in some of the, rural communities. We had, talked with low English proficiency groups, as well as, key stakeholders to help us understand what are the needs. And again, taking a step back is like, is LTD meeting the needs today? And if not, what might that look like? And we used that input to develop the series of initial recommendations, which we took then out to a 3rd round of outreach, where we said, here's where we think we might go. What do you think? And, taking that feedback, then allowed us to create the preferred alternative, which is what we have here today. Ultimately, I want to, I do this, I've been doing this for almost 30 years right now. There are very few times when, as a result of our final round of outreach, more than 80% of our respondents say, hey, you're on the right track. I think by responding to the number one things that we heard from the community, which is additional frequency, additional reliability, and more options in a fiscally constrained way in the short term, and building upon that in the longer term, meets what we heard were the top priorities for both users and non-users in the future. So what were those goals? Like, again, listening to what the community had to say, improving frequency, but also improving legibility and reducing some of the route duplication, where in some cases we had buses going back to back for more than a mile on a regular basis every day. Improving weekend service and extending service to some of these new high growth areas, where new apartments are showing up, where there might not be service today. We divided up our recommendations into two different phases. What can we do within our existing resources, and in particular, our existing operators, and what can we do in the long term when more operating resources as well as operators might be available? I want to be clear here that, specifically the long-term recommendations, those, they're I don't want to say they're more aspirational, but they can't all happen at once. I love the fact that we're hearing about, operator classes, being full, which gives us that opportunity to begin investing in some of these next steps as more resources become available. But I want to focus a little bit on the short-term recommendations. And I want to be clear here that most of the route alignments don't change with this. And so this is, we did not look at blowing up the system and putting it back together. We looked at how do we build upon the strengths of the existing system and make it better. And so that was one of the key things that we wanted to do here. And one of the first steps was to improve improve frequency on some of the highest ridership routes, the Route 11, the MX, and a series of other routes. And most of these improvements happened in September of this year. So, kudos to staff for getting those operators and getting those, getting that back. That was one of the top things we heard from our customers. The second piece is to create a series of high frequency corridors, service that comes every 15 minutes, throughout the day. 15-minute service, which is what the MX and Route 11 typically do, about, attracts more riders. You don't need a schedule to use it, and it makes transfers at any one of the stations easier as a result. We looked at using scheduling and offsetting routes by looking at creating a 15-minute service on River Road between Santa Clara and downtown, on Coburg Road between Harlow and Oakway Center and downtown, and connecting downtown Eugene, University of Oregon, and 30th and Hilliard with 15-minute service, which is where there's a high concentration of housing and other activity centers there. One of the other elements was we looked at making permanent the reduction of service on suspended routes 27, 73, and 78. These routes have been suspended for more than 3 years right now. And, we reached out to some of the communities that would be impacted with this. And while there was definitely some disappointment, and, the folks that expressed some, that were not happy with some of the recommendations typically were on one of these routes. One of the positives that came out of this was that they responded well to the future mobility management solutions, i.e. smaller vehicles, more flexible services that were more appropriate for some of the areas where formerly were operated by fixed route services. So what does this look like? And I'm just going to quickly show on a map, green lines represent service that comes every 15 minutes or better, throughout parts of the day. And there's, 3 additional corridors where that green line is: up River Road, up Coburg Road, and Hilliard. And so there's a couple of additions where it's orange, which is where service is being removed, and those are typically some of the routes that have been suspended for the past 3 years, and some of the blue lines that represent changes in existing alignments, such as Route 41. Which would no longer serve serve Danabo and instead serve Bertelson between Royal and 11th. One of the other key additions here is, the addition of service to Willow Creek by an extension of Route 36 to serve the new apartment complexes that have been constructed there, to add them into our service. And we can do this at little to no cost as well. So what are some of the, from a frequency perspective, I'm not going to name all of these. There's a series of routes that have frequency improvements recommended in the short term. Most of these have happened already in September of this year. There's a series of routing changes, and these include, removing some deviations to improve speed and reliability, to make some changes to routes, how they get between River Road and downtown, so that we can get a consistent corridor that has 15-minute service, as well as making some changes to services between downtown and LCC, so that we have consistent 30-minute service throughout the day. With that, and a more regular schedule that better matches some of the patterns that we're seeing between LCC and the rest of the system. We looked at what some of the Title VI implications are of this. Most routes don't have a change in alignment or a change in frequency, or if they do have a change in frequency, it's one for the better. And we see that there will be no disparate impacts to disadvantaged communities to the service plan in the short term. In the long term, as more resources become available, one of the key things we looked at was improving frequency in some of the key corridors, and some of the key corridors that we feel can support higher levels of frequency include West 18th, MLK Centennial, as well as Highway 99 between Barger and downtown. We also, working together with the City of Eugene, are looking at improving transit circulation in downtown Eugene, responding to one of the key things we heard from rural services, which is we want additional trips, and begin adding back some trips to some of the outlying communities to respond to this key lifeline service for these communities. We also recognize that additional capital improvements are necessary to improve speed and reliability in the short and in the long term, and then take that next step to develop that policy framework to allow for new flexible services and on-demand services that better serve some of those areas where big buses can't necessarily get into some of these neighborhoods. This similar map shows, where additional green elements are, or green lines are. It includes River Road, it includes Highway 99, Centennial, MLK, and West 18th as areas that have higher frequency, and also a blue line, which connects Barger and Highway 99 and Santa Clara area via Maxwell, a new connection that we know that people are making, right now, but by making a easier and more direct connection, they won't have to come downtown to downtown Eugene in order to make that. So it's another long-term recommendation for that. Oops, let me go the right way. From a frequency perspective, a series of frequency. I'm not going to read all these, but overall, improving frequency in the highest ridership corridors and in the key corridors that aren't frequent today, and then ultimately, serving Maxwell Road with an extension of Route 41, but also extending Route 13 to serve Marcola Meadows, which has, both single family and high density housing coming online, and giving them a direct connection to downtown Eugene with a frequent service, and, connecting them to some of the retail as well as job opportunities that are out there. So with that, this has been a year-long process. A quick summary of what some of those recommendations are. Hopefully we've summarized, everything, but we're here for ultimate approval. And I'm going to hand it back over to Jeremy.
Yeah, we have additional slides as well. If anybody has any specific route questions, we can answer those. I will say on the rural service, we did stop any recommended changes. We discontinued those because we felt enough participation from the public. So those will be separate planning processes with the long-range mobility plan and other planning projects to help get that rural feedback. But happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you. Any questions? No? What a great job you did, huh? No questions? Anything? Go ahead.
Route 98, I believe, is the Cottage Grove, the main
Correct.
route.
Yes.
Crestwell Cottage Grove. I saw the part about more study is needed, but I'm curious, is it more trips and has the ridership gone back up since COVID? I mean, there are several things that affect that particular route.
Right. So ridership has increased since the pandemic hit. We have not had the resources to add trips. We're down to, I think, 5 trips on Cottage Grove.
Okay.
And we were at 8.5 or 9.
Okay.
Or 9.5. So we are looking to add trips. We don't have the resources for that right now.
Okay.
We do understand that is a need for our rural services.
And there's the demand.
Yes, there's demand there, and we do want to provide that service. We just can't do it right now.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So when you say resources, you mean drivers mostly?
Operators primarily, yes, but as we start to increase frequency, you start adding vehicles to our peak. So it's in addition, we have to plan for those additional peak trips as we're planning for that additional service. It may require additional vehicles, and that's something that will have to be planned for in a longer term.
Thank you. You talked about how you looked at this post-COVID pandemic and how the trends had changed. I'm just curious, is this similar to what other transit districts have observed, sort of the different patterns of how people travel or access service?
One of the things that, there have been key changes to how people travel. And so there's some global changes in terms of, that downtown employment in particular is not as, strong as people work from home a little bit more often. But even locally, if we look at, some of the local travel patterns, one of the key markets that LTD has, for instance, is U of O students. And the construction in the past 5 years of multifamily complexes immediately adjacent to campus has shifted where some of the students live. And so some of the outlying apartment complexes used to have significantly higher ridership than they do right now. And so these are trends that we've seen and we expect to continue to see as we see, how students, by changing where they live, change the utilization of LTD services. So there's some global pieces, but also specific to your service area that has significantly changed over the past 5 years.
I will add there's relatively few transit agencies that have returned to 100% ridership or pre-pandemic ridership. Most folks are still well below that level.
In the Pacific Northwest especially.
You talked about the University of Oregon, but what about LCC? Have those traffic or the travel patterns changed?
LCC ridership is significantly below what it was pre-pandemic. And this is a pattern that we've also seen on a national basis that, I guess it was like 10 years ago, community colleges were generating significantly more ridership than they were today. I think community colleges on a whole, if you look at their enrollment patterns, have seen a decline in enrollment. And we're seeing the result of that is less trips going to community colleges. And so I think that, to me, that's something I've seen nationally, and it's one of the things I believe is true here too.
Just anecdotally, we did get notified by Lane or LCC that they have increased, their registration has increased.
Right.
We have not seen the corresponding transit levels increase. So we're thinking that a lot of those are still doing online or remote learning.
That's what I was going to ask, if maybe that was a factor, is more availability of online classes.
Right. And the U of O, I think, is reducing their virtual courses, their course load. So they're bringing people back to campus, and LCC, I think, is still kind of in that flux area.
I think it was in the long term, just for clarification. So, like say the Echo Hollow Maxwell route, is that an example of like you guys trying to not necessarily use Eugene Station as like a hub connector.
Correct. So one of the things we found with Transit Tomorrow, which was the previous COA effort, a lot of people wanted those crosstown connectors. So we're looking at how can we make those crosstown connections utilize the infrastructure we have. We are limited to 4 bridges. That's it. That's all we got. So when we can make those connections, this one in particular is really wanted because of the access to Winco. So having that, discount grocery store where now they don't have to go all the way downtown to get a bus all the way back up Highway 99, they can just take that trip straight across Prairie Road. So there are places where we can do that, but we are limited by infrastructure. As those infrastructure changes are made and those crosstown connections can be made, I think we'll be looking at how we can do that.
No. Thank you. That was very helpful, and I think we're ready for a motion.
I move to adopt LTD resolution number 2024-10-18-030, approving the 2024 LTD system review final report and recommendations.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Gino?
Yes.
Lawrence?
Yes.
Heather?
Aye.
And Pete?
Aye.
And Susan, I vote yes too. So unanimously, thank you so much.
All right, hello to members of the board. I'm John Allen with Mobility Services for Lane Transit. I'm here to talk to you today about STIF discretionary applications. So we have a proposed motion to adopt a resolution which contain recommendations that have gone before SPC and Lane Act. SPC on October 8th, Lane Act on October 9th. This contains application materials for STIF discretionary projects. It's just a very small portion of your packet, pages 267 to 346. So you have my thanks and respect for being able to make it through that. But let me try and summarize, maybe make this a little bit easier. So STIF discretionary funds are actually an umbrella that are comprised of 3 separate funding types. True STIF discretionary funds, about $12 million. STIF intercommunity funds, about $10 million. And federal 5311F funds that pass through the state. There's about $3 million there. This is statewide competitive funding. So we're not so much competing against each other's projects locally, but we are, as part of a statewide pool, competing for these funds. So we might get none, we might get all. The merits of the applications themselves will speak up to those. So both at SPC and Lane Act, there was an opportunity to both either rank or give decisions on fund or no fund any of these projects. And those committees did not decide to either rank or to select any of the projects as no fund or no go. However, there was significant comment that is included in the packet that I'll simply characterize as, in my opinion, widely positive. So those are included in there. But I'll give brief summaries of each project leading into a recommendation for a motion. So first project on the list is a close collaboration project. And let me just note, we've worked very closely with several different entities on each of these projects. So that's included our partners at City of Eugene, City of Florence, LCOG, many others in the development of these. So this has been a larger community effort. And the first project being service for the riverfront area. So if you've passed by, you'll notice there's been quite a bit of significant construction taking place. We're anticipating a significant increase in population in that area, currently unserved or underserved by public transit. And so the idea is that the discretionary application would allow us to expand our services to be able to provide better coverage for folks that either are living or are soon to be living in that area. So that's $960K in discretionary funds for a total of a $1.2 million project. Again, we wouldn't be assured of receiving those funds, but that is the application as it's been proposed. The second is service that we coordinate with Link Lane. That's the Florence Eugene Link Lane service through LCOG. That's a service that actually began in February of 2020, provides a significant number of trips in our community. So we do over 10,000 rides at over 600,000 miles over the course of a biennium. That's a $938K ask out of a almost $2 million project. Fare for that service is $5. It serves and connects folks between areas in Mapleton, Veneta, all the way to the grocery outlet in Florence is the turnaround point. It was one of the most widely requested services in our community when that began. And so really strongly and enthusiastically requested as part of a transit development plan that both LCOG and LTD was involved in, leading to the service as it is today. It allows the use of bicycles to be brought on board the bus, and there's been close coordination with the Confederated Tribes to be able to set up that service. The third on the list is the Florence Yachats Link Lane service. And so that originated back in 2018. And so that was an LTD originated pilot program that was the last unserved stretch of coastline by public transportation. Even for some folks who can make the pretty incredible journey of bicycling along the entire Oregon coast, oftentimes we'll skip that stretch just to how dangerous that it can be. So having a connecting service so that someone can ride public transit up and down the coast has been important. And we work closely with LCOG on the ongoing operations of that service. That's a $463K discretionary ask with a $579K total budget. That provides 4 trips per day, 7 days a week along that stretch of highway. It also has grown to serve commuters in the area, folks that are going to work every day between Florence and Yachats. So that served as an important connection. And that starts and goes to the log house in Yachats and then turns around at the grocery outlet in Florence. The next service we have on our list is the Diamond Express, which has been ongoing for many years using either intercommunity or 5311F funds. This provides approximately 600 rides per month and is an important lifeline connection to the community of Oak Ridge. We found that it's particularly important due to exigent circumstances like wildfire, snow and ice events. Even though Amtrak rails go by the community, there's not a stop in Oak Ridge, so it's important that we provide connecting service. This has been an important service that provides 4 trips per day, 5 days a week, and we've added Saturday service, which allows people to go to Oak Ridge for recreation. We've worked closely with City of Florence for our next project to initiate a discretionary planning project for a Florence transportation hub or mobility hub. So you've heard me mention the grocery outlet a couple of times already tonight. There's actually many more services that happen to have a stop and turn around at the grocery outlet in Florence. This wasn't part of a grand strategic design effort. It happened to be in the middle of Florence, and there happened to be some area where we could park a couple of buses. We can't park all of the vehicles for these services at the same time, so it makes it very challenging, if not impossible, for us to have schedules that truly coordinate or interline in that area. So we can typically squeeze a couple of buses in there, but there's actually 5 different services that we'd like to be able to have meet in an area that could be more strategically designed or planned. So it could be somewhere there or nearby, but that would be the effort that we're proposing, is to undergo a planning effort so that we could have a shovel-ready project in the future and find an additional or alternative funding source to actually build and implement a mobility hub in the area where people can synchronize all the different transit services that go through. So those would include the Coos Bay Florence Express, the Florence Eugene service, the Florence Yahat service, and then there's 2 Rodeo Express lines, the blue and green, that all currently terminate at that grocery outlet location. The next project that we have is a rural shuttle pilot that we're proposing. So this is service very similar to what we've previously tried in South Lane, where we're able to provide transportation options for people who live outside of an area otherwise served by public transportation. So with the intention that we can connect folks either to the metropolitan area or to another transportation source. So that's been successful throughout South Lane, but what we've noticed is that there's many other areas in rural North Lane County, West Lane County, East Lane County that do not have those options. So we're proposing a model where we will still be able to provide a level of service in South Lane County for, let's say, 2 or 3 days a week. And for those other periods of time, so we might say, and we haven't defined what these service areas might be, but we might say, all right, well, in West Lane County, 1 day a week, we want to be able to provide some level of transportation service. And somewhere in North Lane County, we want to be able to provide some level. So we can creatively, by using and dividing our vehicles by day of week, we're able to serve more areas than we otherwise would need to be able to. So it requires some closer coordination with our ridership, but allows us to serve more people in more places using limited resources. The final project that we have on our discretionary applications is for an additional shopper shuttle vehicle. So this uses that same kind of model where within the metropolitan area, we actually divide by neighborhood. So each day of the week, we'll serve a different neighborhood throughout the metropolitan area. And we'll take groups of like-minded older adults out on shopping expeditions where folks can go forward and actually get assistance from the driver with their bags, which is something that we wouldn't be able to do on, say, like our fixed route service, to be able to go and have a fun excursion and go shopping with peers. So it winds up being great for everyone. It's good for us because it's much more efficient than doing these as individual trips. It's good for members of the public because it promotes independence. We offer a lower fare than we would otherwise if these were individually scheduled. And so the service has become so popular, we're hoping to be able to expand it, but what we're actually noticing is that our current vehicle is very old and past its estimated useful service life. So our proposal actually isn't for the operations, but for the purchase and procurement of a new vehicle to be able to support that service. So altogether, those make the proposed discretionary applications that have been reviewed through SPC and Lane Act. Comment is enclosed in the packet. I, again, would characterize those as just broadly positive is what we've included and heard. And then just also a reminder that there's no guarantee that we would have any entitlement to any of these dollars or resources. They're merely asks as part of a competitive process. So the request that goes before the board is to adopt a resolution that would approve the recommendations of the STIF Advisory Committee with the intention that then it will proceed to a statewide level where they will be scored and ranked and reviewed through ODOT. So with that in mind, I would entertain any questions and otherwise at some point look to a motion.
Any questions? I think we need a field trip to the grocery outlet.
Well, the good news is I have many buses that will take you there. So.
Okay. Maybe we should have a board meeting there sometime. Okay. Are there any other questions at all or comments? You always present something in such a precise way, but understandable. So it's really helpful. Thank you. So, question? Ready for the motion?
I move to adopt LTD resolution number 2024-10-18-031, adopting the fiscal year 26-27 statewide transportation improvement fund discretionary and statewide transit network recommendations for submission to the Oregon Department of Transportation.
Second.
Thank you. Pete?
Aye.
Heather?
Aye.
Lawrence?
Yes.
Gino?
Yes.
Susan? Yes. Thank you. And good luck.
Thank you, Teal.
Good evening. My name is Eric Bridenstine. I'm the Director of Marketing here at LTD. And I'm joining you this evening to discuss a proposed contract for a comprehensive website design services project. LTD's website serves as an essential communication channel used by writers, partners, and the general public to access a range of information about LTD and its services. The comprehensive website development project will modernize this communication channel. And through this process, LTD will develop and maintain a functional website intentionally designed to be accessible and easy to navigate by mobile device users, people with disabilities, users who speak languages other than English, and by users spanning a range of comfortability with technology. And now I'll turn over to Wendy Frisbee, who will discuss the process LTD took to evaluate proposals and select a vendor.
Thank you, Eric. So procurement took on an RFP process for this. And we ended up having 10 vendors that responded. 9 of them were considered responsive. And so ultimately at the end, after the evaluation committee assessed everything, Planetarium Media came up as the most responsive and responsible vendor to provide website design, project management, testing, implementation, hosting, and support services. Thank you.
Okay, and so the total contract value for 5 years is up to $350,000, which is funded through the general fund. I appreciate your time, and Wendy and I are happy to answer any questions you have about the process we undertook or the contract.
Curious, what all is involved? So it's obviously not just a website redesign for 350,000. What else is in there? Ongoing maintenance, training, something?
Yes, so implementation, hosting of that, support services. So it's basically like the whole package of us having this website up and running through Planetarium Media, ongoing, yeah, for a 5-year contract.
Thank you.
Have you worked with this group before? No?
No, we have not. They do have extensive experience with other transportation agencies.
Okay.
Just to back that, we do reference checks when we do our RFP processes, and so we've had good reviews on all of them.
What's it mean like that they were responsive?
For the longer process that we do through procurement. And so responsible and responsive, basically, so they've submitted all their documentation, they've met all of our requirements. And then also they're considered responsible because they have, they meet all the requirements that we have. But responsive just basically means that they've checked all the boxes that we need to submit an accurate proposal.
Okay. So in my head, like they don't like, I guess, like give examples of what your website could look like, or is that just something that comes after?
If that's one of the criteria that we requested, so yes, and we did ask for the demo, like for what they like current vendors that they're using, like current transit agencies that they're utilizing that their service, so that we could have that as a reference. Part of the documentation would be like, did they sign all of our certificates? Did they state that they've not been debarred from doing government business? So things like that we look at for procurement before it even goes to the evaluation team. Does that help?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. It's one of those procurement things that are kind of boring, but very required and needed.
Where are they located?
They're located out of California.
Okay. Okay. Your microphone is on. Okay. Thank you. When would this be able to start?
It's estimated to be about an 8-month implementation process. So depending on the exact start date, roughly 8 months to 10 months from that date.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are we ready for a motion?
Anybody else want to go? I move to adopt LTD Resolution 2024-10-18-033, authorizing the CEO to enter into a contract with Planetary Media for the purpose of comprehensive website design and development services.
Second.
Thank you. So it's moved and seconded. Lawrence,
Yes.
Heather?
Aye.
Pete?
Aye.
Gino?
Yes.
And Susan, yes. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Motion passed. We're betting 1,000 on the motions.
I know,
Is that
right?
Okay,
And
thank
impeachment
you.
tonight.
And the CEO evaluation process, and Blake is going to take us through that. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, I shouldn't take much of your time. And this is the process that you followed last year when SDAO facilitated it. And really the main change that we're doing is that my office would facilitate it this year. You'll see it's on pages 351 to 365 in your packet. I'm not going to go through all of that. I'll try to be as good as John was about summarizing. I have a lot less to start with. But page 351 has where the AIS has a pretty good breakdown. And essentially, I'm going to condense it to 6 steps. First, Jameson does a self-evaluation. That's second, that self-evaluation goes to the board members and they have the opportunity to fill out the forms and provide their own input, their own evaluations of Jameson independently. And there'll be plenty of time for that. The next step then would be for those forms to be returned to my office, and we would basically collate, organize them, and produce a report. And that would then come back to the board, who would meet an executive session to discuss it with all the caveats about not talking about compensation. Right? And then you would come out of the executive session to actually summarize it formally, and then make a decision at that point to authorize the president and the vice president to negotiate the contract with Jameson. And then after that, it's up to the president and vice president to actually do that. And then my office would help facilitate that negotiation so that we produce a contract. Otherwise it's the same process you followed last year, just a little bit different in terms of that. And what's being asked tonight is for the board to adopt the process so that it's a consistent, stable process going forward and in future contract evaluations.
I thought the process last year was really a good one, so.
Yeah, it seemed to be.
Stay with that. And Jameson is on board with this.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
In my experience on various boards and receiving these myself, it's important to just stay on track, have it roll through every time, and certainly present it if there's something different that we want. But I liked the process as well. So
great.
Is there a motion? Or are there more comments? Questions? Okay. Motion.
I move to adopt the outline process for the CEO annual performance review.
Second.
Thank you. You got quite a team. Lawrence?
Aye.
Gino?
Yes.
Heather?
Aye.
Pete?
Aye.
And Susan. So passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Blake. Okay, so other business? We're running ahead of time, but I guess we've done everything. Okay. Jameson, the delegated authority report.
So it's in the packet. If there's any questions on the delegated authority report, we'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions? Okay, and Jameson, the monthly department reports for September.
Yep. Again, with the department report within the packet, if there's any questions for any departments, happy to answer those as well.
Thank you. And Amy, operations monthly report.
Same, I think these are all in the packet for your review. If you have any questions, happy to answer.
Okay, ditto and ditto. Ally, board members report or the information of future meetings? Anything?
There's any comments from board members who've participated in committee meetings?
Anything for committees?
So what's that?
Did you have
Any
anything
committees?
to report?
No.
The only thing I would say, Lane Acton, I wasn't at the last meeting, but I did see Vidal last night, and I know that they're going through, there's quite a bit of change in membership on Lane Acton, so for future committee reference, it's just good to know, and we were just in a conversation about it. There's quite a few emails that have gone out about it, so they're in a big period of change.
That's a nice way to put it.
Yeah.
That's a nice way to put it. There's some leadership change, and also at the last meeting, the report that you saw on the STIF projects that John Allen gave was discussed there as well and met favorably. So just wanted to add that to the context.
Thank you. Okay, anything else? Anything from people sitting on the side there? Okay, if there's nothing else, I think the meeting is ready to be adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And sadly, we're stopping in the dark.
Oh, yeah.
Used to be sunny out there, so thank you.